welcome to the weekly show. Our first guest is a man who's been married for nearly 30 years. He dedicates his life to teaching not only children, teens, but also grown men and women. He goes by the pen name Rated G Romance. You can catch some of his gossip, ideas, and general information on his website, ratedgromance.com, or on Twitter @RatedGRomance. Mr. Romance, thank you for joining us today.
I'm really happy to be here.
I'll start off by asking, what makes you qualified to give out romantic tips?
My experiences, I think, are what give me my credentials, but let me just give you some backstory. About 5 years ago, after my 25th anniversary, I had a really great anniversary event and thing planned for my wife, and it went over really well. I had a lot of people telling me, you know what, you should help other people be more romantic and things like that. The irony of it is that after that event, I was stuck. I'd been doing romantic gestures for my wife for 25 years, and I honestly had no clue where to go next. And so through the help of my friends on Twitter and now on Facebook and my site, I actually started researching what makes things romantic. And it's not just, there's some books out there on 1,001 romantic gestures and things like that, but I actually wanted to go to the core and find out what makes things romantic. And so for the last 5 years, I've been researching that both academically through scholarly papers, and then also I just love the feedback on the Twitter feed. So I'm sort of self-trained, but then also trying to take a fairly academic approach to it.
I'm speaking with Gregory Blake. You can find him all over the net, including his webpage, ratedgromance.com. Very basic question for you, but what are the keys to a successful relationship?
Number one thing is commitment. And then the second side, I like to look at some research by Dr. Sue Johnson has looked at the attachment aspect of being in a quality relationship, and it's being able to answer those comfort questions. So, are you there for me? Will you answer me when I call? Do I matter to you? And that's actually where it sort of overlapped with the romantic gestures, is that do I matter to you? It's a way of showing that person that they really matter. Those sorts of things. So in terms of a long-term relationship, I think in some ways it's the commitment and then some safety. And ironically, that's kind of a little bit different than what we see in the classic romance movie, for instance, where there's just peril everywhere. In a successful relationship, you are comfortable with one another, but in a really loving way.
Brilliant. Now, there should be an alarm going off right now for most men out there. It's February, which means we are so close to Valentine's Day. What is a good idea for a man who wants to impress a date? Furthermore, is there a difference for a gift you have for somebody you've been dating for a month, 1 year, 10 years, or even 30 years?
Okay. What I would suggest right from the very get-go is there's research to show that if you don't give the person what they want, anything else you do thoughtful is irrelevant. So if your partner has been sort of giving you the hints that I would like to go to such and such a restaurant, or I would like this in my Valentine's gift, you really got to listen to that. That's really super important. So first thing, give them what they want. If you haven't gotten any clues as to what you want, then it's all about putting together layers of things that matter. So let me give you a few. If I want to talking to guys specifically, imagine it's kind of like you're playing football, and there's a set of plays that you put together. So you call the numbers, and so one of those could be, for instance, something I call gone blank all of a sudden. So something I call the wink, where basically, if there's an inside joke between the two of you, is there something that you could do in your romantic gesture that would show that person that you understand that connection? These kinds of things apply not just to romantic relationships, but to friendships. So for instance, I had a friend that basically anything to do with alpacas is funny. And that sounds dumb out of context, but again, it's that connection. It's something special to them. Another idea, another layer of things is go back to something, a meaningful location for you. So if you the place where you had your first kiss, or your the first hotel where you ever went on a date together, kind of thing, or just that kind of context. So it's kind of like going back to where some place that was romantically significant to you before. We used to, for years, go back to Harrison Hot Springs because that's where we had our honeymoon, for instance. And unfortunately, the restaurant we loved there has since gone out of business. But we would make an effort to get up there at least once a year and recognize that. Another sort of concept to know is if you are just dating someone, oftentimes a little bit of fear and trepidation can actually add to your connection. So they did this interesting study where they had random guys come up to a person that was in on it, and they stood on the Capilano Bridge and here in Vancouver. And the people that met in that context, in that slightly scary context, actually were more likely to ask for that person's telephone number for a date later on. And so whereas it was taken somewhere else, that wasn't the same thing. So a little bit of peril sometimes can add it. So a little hard this time of year, but I don't know, maybe snowmobiling or skiing or trying something new that they haven't been into. Interesting enough, that doesn't apply quite so much with married couples. Married couples actually, instead of the peril, what they're looking for is some sort of growth situation together. So where like a cooking class together or something like that.
You're watching The Weekly Show with Trevor McManus. Joining me via Skype right now is Gregory Blake, better known as Rated G Romance. You can find him all over the internet, including ratedgromance.com, facebook.com/ratedgromance, as well as on Twitter @ratedgromance. Mr. Blake is here donating his time to help you with your Valentine's Day woes and keep your head in the relationship game. Although self-admittedly he doesn't have a doctorate in therapy, he does have nearly 30 years on his marriage certificate. Rated G Romance, this might be a loaded question, but why do most men hesitate and get worked up around Valentine's Day? It's obviously important to most females, but why do most men just shrug it off and say it isn't a real holiday?
You know what? There's actually a tendency even among women for the same reason. And I think part of that is the unmet expectations. There, at some point in the past, somebody screwed up and they ended up not getting what they wanted, or the experience was unfortunate for them. And or alternately, as a guy, say you gave flowers to someone, and like the kiss of death is if you try to do something romantic for someone and they turn around and say, that was fine, but, or something like that. So if it is a loaded holiday. It is one of those times when the expectations are higher, and so it's easier to fail, unfortunately. I would encourage everybody to sort of switch it around and think of it as the one day of the year where you can take your romantic gestures and take it to the next level, because we obviously can't afford to go to the best restaurant or to the best ski resort or whatever every day of the year. But those romantic gestures are important all year, but you can't take it to the same level all the time. And so anniversaries, Valentine's Day, and to a lesser extent Christmas time are a really good time to take it to the next level. And but yeah, it's the unmet expectations.
So to simplify it, your Valentine key is managing expectations. Excellent advice. Moving on, I have a coworker, and she's had some somewhat unsuccessful relationships. She feels like she has a relationship curse. Do you have any suggestions for her, or is she completely doomed?
You know what? No, definitely not doomed. Absolutely not doomed. Couple things. One, ironically, I'm going to recommend online dating, especially eHarmony. I have had more successful couples come out of that than you'd be surprised how many. That's one way to look at it. Don't be afraid to try that. The other thing is also check and see where you are trying to find guys. So they don't just magically show up and go poof and they're there for you. That's not like that. And I'm going to offend some people here, but really bars and clubs are not the place to meet guys. Okay, so if you can't find a successful relationship, it might be part of where you're fishing, so to speak. And so that's find the context where you'll meet the kind of guy you want to meet. And so anyways, that's a couple ideas there.
So are you suggesting that maybe it's less the fishermen, but more the pond they're fishing in?
Yes, I would say so.
Thank you very much, Rated G Romance, for your enlightening, simple, but helpful advice. I feel like a smarter, better person with your presence, even if it is over Skype. I'm also very pleased to announce that you're our very first guest on our brand new show. So thank you for being a part of us.
Oh, thank you so much.
He's a man who's been married for nearly 30 years. He's a teacher, husband, father, as well as a romance guru. You can find him all over online, www.facebook.com/ratedgromance, as well as his website, ratedgromance.com. And finally on Twitter with over 30,000 people following his advice at ratedgromance. Once again, thank you for joining us today.